My phone buzzed on the nightstand yesterday afternoon. A name I hadn't seen in 4 months lit up the screen. Sarah. For a split second, my stomach just plummeted. Like that feeling you get when you lean back too far in a chair. Her message was short. She said she'd been thinking a lot about what happened last semester. She said she felt terrible, that she never meant for things to go so far, and that she hoped we could talk and she could somehow make it up to me. I stared at the words for a long, long time. I thought about being the bigger person. I thought about grace and forgiveness and all the things you're supposed to do. Then I typed back, "Go fuck yourself." And I blocked her number. Her response came through on another app a few minutes later, because of course she'd find another way to reach me. She called me immature, said I was holding a grudge, and that my response proved I still hadn't emotionally grown. And maybe she's right. Maybe it was a harsh, childish thing to do. But before you judge me, you have to understand what she took from me last semester. You have to understand that she didn't just cause a little drama. She torched my entire academic life and my reputation over a single, private sentence that she twisted into a weapon. So, I'll ask you. Am I the asshole for that text? Let me take you back to last spring. I was taking this ridiculously hard cognitive neuroscience class. The professor was brilliant, but his lectures were dense, and the material required absolute, total concentration. And that's something I've always struggled with. I'm not diagnosed with anything, officially, but my brain has always been a little busy. A noisy place. In a big lecture hall, every little sound, every movement, pulls my focus. The guy 2 rows back clicking his pen, the person next to me typing too loudly, the squeak of a chair. It's a constant battle just to stay tethered to the lecture. In the front row of this class, there was a guy I'll call Liam. He was deaf, and he had a sign language interpreter with him for every class. They sat right in the professor's line of sight, which makes perfect sense. He deserved every opportunity to learn, just like the rest of us. I want to be absolutely clear about this, I have never, not for 1 second, had a problem with Liam or his accommodations. His presence in the class was just a fact, like the whiteboard or the uncomfortable chairs. But the reality of my distractible brain meant that my eyes were constantly drawn to the interpreter. It wasn't their fault. Their hands were a constant, fluid motion in my peripheral vision. It was dynamic. It was interesting. It was, for my brain, infinitely more engaging than a PowerPoint slide on the function of the hippocampus. So I'd find myself watching the signs, then realizing I'd missed the last 2 minutes of what the professor said, and I'd feel this surge of panic. I'd try to force my focus back, but it was like trying to not look at a flashing light. This went on for weeks. I was falling behind. My notes were full of gaps, and I was getting more and more stressed out. I tried moving my seat. I sat way over on the far side of the room. I sat in the very back row. But the lecture hall was tiered, so I could still see them. I was frustrated, mostly at myself. At my own inability to just focus. One afternoon, after a particularly rough lecture where I felt like I hadn't absorbed a single word, I was walking with Sarah to the library. Sarah, at the time, was my friend. We were in the same program, had a couple of classes together. She presented herself as this deeply empathetic, socially conscious person. Always posting on social media about injustice, always ready to call someone out. At the time, I just thought she was passionate. I was just venting. It was a private conversation. A moment of pure, stupid frustration. I remember saying, "I'm so screwed for this midterm. I can't focus for a second in that class." She gave me a sympathetic look. "Yeah, it's a tough one. It's not just the material," I sighed. I feel like a terrible person for even thinking this, but the interpreter in the front row. I literally can't stop watching. My brain just latches onto the movement and I completely tune out the professor. I ran a hand through my hair. I honestly just wish they sat in the back or something. Just so it wasn't right in my direct line of sight. It would be so much less distracting for me. That was it. That was the entire comment. A private, whispered complaint born of academic desperation. It wasn't hateful. It wasn't a demand. It was a selfish, frustrated thought that I unwisely said out loud to someone I thought was my friend. Sarah didn't say much. She just nodded, her expression unreadable. I thought nothing of it. We got to the library, studied, and went on with our days. The next class was 2 days later. I walked in, found my seat towards the middle of the room, and started getting my notebook out. The usual pre-lecture buzz was in the air. People were chatting, scrolling on their phones. Then I felt a shadow fall over my desk. It was Liam. And his interpreter was right beside him. My blood went cold. He never moved from the front row. Never. I had never spoken a single word to him in my life. He just stood there, staring down at me with an intensity that made my throat close up. The interpreter stood at his shoulder, her hand still. The small pocket of conversation around me died out. People were starting to look. Then, Liam began to sign. The interpreter's voice cut through the air, sharp and clear. "Do you have a problem with me?" I was completely blindsided. I just blinked up at him. "What? No. Of course not." His hands moved again, fast and angry. The interpreter translated, her voice rising to match his obvious fury. "My friend Sarah told me what you said. That my interpreter is a distraction to you. That you wish I would sit in the back of the room so you don't have to look at me." The lecture hall was silent now. Absolutely silent. The professor had stopped what he was doing at the podium. Every single eye, all 40 or so of them, was on me. Pinned to my chair. I could feel the heat rising in my face, a hot, prickly shame. "No, that's not," I stammered, my own voice sounding small and weak. "I didn't mean it like that. I have trouble focusing. It's Amy problem, it's not about you. I just get distracted easily." I was pleading. Trying to make him, and the entire class, understand. But his face was like stone. His hands jabbed the air. "A you problem that you're making my problem," the interpreter said. "You think your minor inconvenience is more important than my ability to get an education? Do you have any idea how it feels to be told you're a burden?" My mind was reeling. A burden? I never said that. I never even thought that. Sarah. She must have twisted everything. She had taken my moment of personal frustration and reframed it as a targeted, ableist attack. And then came the part that I will never, ever forget. The part that still makes me feel sick to my stomach when I think about it. Liam looked at me, his eyes full of a pain and anger that felt bottomless. And for the first time all semester, he used his own voice. It was strained, guttural, a sound that clearly took a great deal of effort. It wasn't loud, but in that dead silent room, it was a gunshot. "You have no right," he rasped, the words thick and uneven, "to make me feel like a burden for just existing." And that was it. My trial and my sentencing, all in one. He had deployed his disability like a tactical weapon, a final, unanswerable blow. How do you argue with that? How do you defend yourself when a man who has struggled his whole life uses his actual voice to tell a room full of people that you, specifically, have made him feel worthless? You can't. You just sit there and die. He turned and walked back to his seat. The professor awkwardly cleared his throat and started the lecture. But I didn't hear a word. I just sat there, under the weight of 40 pairs of eyes, feeling their judgment burn into my skin. I was no longer a fellow student. I was the monster who bullies the disabled kid. Sarah, from across the room, wouldn't even look at me. She just stared at her notebook, the picture of innocence. The rest of the semester was a special kind of hell. Word spread like a virus. People I didn't even know would give me dirty looks in the hallway. My lab partners in other classes became distant and cold. People would stop talking when I walked into a room. I was socially radioactive. I tried to talk to the professor after class one day, to explain myself, but he was incredibly dismissive. He just said he hoped I would use the experience as a learning opportunity for developing empathy. I even tried to apologize to Liam. I caught him after class a week later and tried to explain again, very sincerely, that I was sorry I had hurt his feelings, that it was a stupid vent and it was my own issue with focus. His interpreter just signed back, "Liam doesn't want to talk to you," and they walked away. The isolation was crushing. I ate lunch alone every day. I dreaded going to class. My grades suffered because I couldn't focus at all anymore, consumed by anxiety and the feeling of being constantly watched and judged. Sarah, of course, acted as if she had nothing to do with it. She became a sort of hero, the one who stood up for Liam. I saw them talking and laughing after class sometimes. She got what she wanted, a chance to perform her righteousness, and I was the human sacrifice she'd offered up to do it, all because of her decision. Her choice to take a private conversation and turn it into a public spectacle. She wasn't trying to help Liam. She was trying to hurt me. She framed it like she was doing him a service, letting him know how people really feel. But she didn't tell him how I really felt. She told him her own malicious, twisted version. She manufactured a villain so she could play the hero. The semester finally ended. It was the longest 4 months of my life. I limped away with a C in that class and a profound new distrust for people. I spent the summer trying to forget the whole thing. I changed my course schedule for the fall to make sure I had 0 classes with either Sarah or Liam. And then, yesterday, that text message. I regret how I handled things. As I sat there reading it, I didn't feel any compassion. I didn't feel a glimmer of forgiveness. All I felt was the ghost of that semester. The hot shame of the confrontation. The cold dread of walking into that classroom every day. The loneliness. The sheer, grinding injustice of it all. She regrets how she handled it. Not what she did. Not the lie she told. The phrasing was so careful. It was another performance. She wasn't sorry for ruining my semester, she was sorry for the awkward way she went about it. She probably told her therapist about it and was told to make amends as part of her own journey of self-growth. It had nothing to do with me. It was all about her, again. She wanted to make it up to me. How? Could she give me back my grade? Could she go back in time and tell every single one of those students that she lied? Could she erase the memory of Liam's pained, struggling voice branding me an ableist in front of everyone? No. Of course not. An apology now was easy for her. It cost her nothing. It was just a way to wipe her own slate clean, to feel good about herself again. So I let myself feel the anger. All of it. The rage that I had been swallowing for months, I let it surge up, and I poured it into 3 simple words. Go. Fuck. Yourself. Her response that I was immature. That I hadn't grown. Was so perfectly, so poisonously her. The audacity of it almost made me laugh. She sets my life on fire, disappears while I'm left to choke on the smoke, and then comes back months later to criticize me for still smelling like ash. So, I don't know. I'm not a confrontational person. That text was one of the most aggressive things I've ever done. Part of me feels a tiny bit guilty for stooping to that level. The other, much larger part of me feels a profound sense of relief, like I finally said the one true thing I needed to say. So, Reddit. Be honest with me. Was I the asshole here?